What is he doing? He is employing his senses. He has a laboratory. He has a number of gadgets. In that, telescope and microscope are very, very important. A particle or an object can be magnified to the tune of 1,000 times. There was a Dr. Bhama running a pathological lab in Trichy. She and her friend, both of them became very famous in Trichy. One day, Dr. Bhama came to the ashram and she brought a microscope. She said, Swamiji, she was a disciple of mine. Before using it in the laboratory, I want you to look through the microscope to inaugurate it, she said. And she put it on my working table, arranged everything. She, fortunately or luckily, she had a sample of my own blood. So she had brought it. So she put it up and then said, Swamiji, look through it. This is the content of your blood. I looked through the microscope. I said, what is the magnification? She said, 1,000 times. Every cell that was seen through the microscope was increased to 1,000 times, multiplied by 1,000. So I looked at the cell and my impression was, you see, our body looks to be very beautiful, covered with skin and other things, very nice. But when I looked at the cell, it was so ugly and irregular. All irregular cells are heaped together, and that is what we find in the beauty and comeliness of our body. So 1,000 times magnification. Maybe there are microscopes which can increase the size still further. So this is one gadget. Then telescope. Whatever may be the distance of the object, you can still see it clearly with the help of a telescope. Then there are mathematical and other calculations. Various kinds of models they have made in order to understand and interpret the universe and whatever ramifications are transpiring in this universe. This is what they do. But my dear viewers, please understand once and for all, the scientist also is using his own senses for all these observations. He is using his eye, he is using his ear and other organs. So the sensory application is common to our ancient thinkers, the present philosophical or spiritual thinkers like me and the others. We are also using the same senses. After sensorily observing a phenomenon, the senses by themselves cannot see. The mind has to employ the eye, and then only the eye becomes an instrument for the perception. The real perception takes place in the perceiving consciousness. Consciousness is neither matter nor energy, as I always say. Now in the consciousness it is registered, and from there, in the form of memory, reasoning, etc., they arrive at different calculations, different inferences and the like. So what are the methods before the scientist? Sensory observation, followed by very efficient logical reasoning. Our philosophical or spiritual thinkers also had these two and these alone. They never resorted to a laboratory nor any external gadget. They were not necessary. In Delhi, one scientist was talking to me and he was saying in the context of a discussion, see, we are looking at one point that he referred to was that generally when a liquid becomes solid, it gets contracted in size, volume becomes less. But in the case of water, when it becomes ice, there is an increase in volume. This is contrary to all the other observations, he says. It is a mystery and a wonder. I heard him say this. Normally, when a liquid is further reduced into a solid form, there should be a reduction, he says. But in the case of ice, it is an increase. So it is a mystery. They are not able to explain. Water is like that. At the same time, he was continuing to say that we go on observing everything. And finally, whatever we observe, ultimately everything reduces itself into a particle or into a wave. Whether it is a particle or a wave, we go on observing it further and further. And at the last point they say, the particle we observe now disappears subsequently. The same happens to the wave. Now, I am going to ask something there. You are observing, and the particle is your observation. You are seeing something to be a particle. Maybe with your eyes, but in reality with your mind and with your intelligence. So the particle is an imprint in your mind. That particle becomes a wave, and the wave particle, both of them disappear while you go on observing. Whatever you observed disappears. Then what is remaining there? The observer. The observer. If the observed phenomena disappear and the observer alone remains, you tell me what is the reality? What is the last surviving factor? And this observation also is not external. Though you feel it is an external factor, the real observation is inner. It is an imprint of whatever you see that is getting formed in the mind. And it is the mind that does the observation. Is it not something like mind giving rise to a thought and the thought subsiding in the mind itself? The mind gives rise to a thought. One thought, so many thoughts, all of them disappear and subside into the mind process. So far as thoughts are concerned, they are transitory. They have no existence at all apart from the mind. But the mind continues to exist even without thoughts. In the same manner, when the particle and wave have disappeared, what survives is the consciousness of the observer. That is the ultimate reality. Why I said this? Our ancient thinkers were striking at this truth with so much of confidence, clarity, firmness, unshakability. That is how they were able to say, Pratjnanam Brahma, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. The supreme reality is in the way of real knowledge. Knowledge belongs to the knower. It is in the way of a knowing process. That knowing process is not a physical or a chemical process. It can take place only in consciousness, in the sentience that animates and activates the body. This is what we have to understand. So they said, Pratjnanam Brahma. The supreme reality is knowledge. Where I say, the particle and the wave both have disappeared, and I, the observer, still remain. So I am the ultimate. The observing consciousness is the ultimate. This is what they were able to find. So the ancient thinkers, they were exactly scientists. The scientists today are also employing their senses, their intelligence. They were also using. And for the scientists, observation and inference are the two canons available. For them also it is observation and inference. We call it Pratyaksha and Paroksha. But in the ancient people and people like us, we have a third category of knowledge called Aparoksha, direct, intuitive perception or realization. Direct, intuitive perception or realization. We close our eyes. Our mind thinks at first. The thinking of the mind is treated, and the thoughts become lighter, feebler, and slower. Mark my words. The thoughts become lighter, feebler, and slower. So much so, when you start walking slowly, further slowly, ultimately you come to a stop, cease walking. In the same manner, the thoughts subside in their own source of origin. And we understand where from the thoughts arise, where from the dream arises, where from the wakefulness arises, where from or to which the sleep goes. All these we come to know. By coming to know the source of wakefulness, sleep and dream, we have arrived at the source of the entire creation, which is a projection or display of the waking state. So they begin to say, Avyaktat Vyaktayas Sarvaha Prabhavantya Haragame Ratri Agame Praliyante Tatra Iva Avyakta Samjnake. This is a verse from Gita. Krishna says, Avyaktat Vyaktayas Sarvaha Prabhavantya Haragame. It is when light comes up. That means when you wake up, the entire Srishti is born. Ratriagame praliyante. When night dawns, night rises, then everything goes into oblivion. Everything goes into dissolution. So the dissolving source, the evolving source, both of them are the consciousness. This is what they understood. We are not concerned so much with creation, because creation is already done. Say, you are all born, we are born. We are not going to be further born. If at all we think of anything, we can think only of dissolution. The world is already prevailing, reigning before us, around us. If at all we have to discuss anything, when is going to be the dissolution or devolution? This is what we have to discuss. So here they are going to discuss about dissolution, not so much creation. This discussion, by this discussion, you will find your understanding will become clearer and firmer, deeper and loftier, more and more stable and poised. If you remain unthinking, I think there will be no growth. You want to have a lot of maturity. I asked my Gurudev, in his library, hundreds of books were there. All of them were spiritual and philosophical. But I have found my Guru always absorbed in meditation and samadhi. So one day I asked him, Baba, where was the necessity for you to read so many books? And what was the benefit? You know, he nodded his head and said, Suno, listen to me. If I had not read all this and covered so much in the sphere of understanding, I would not have been as poised and peaceful as I am now. Why I am mentioning it? When you understand more, you will find your firmness also will be more. Somewhere on the earth, we remain a simple, small creature, a human being. And we are able to project our intelligence, our mind, our senses to such a horizon, so such a lofty magnitude that we are able to understand this is how the evolution has taken place, and this is how the dissolution is going to be. When you understand that the whole universe is going to be dissolved, I think our perception will completely change. We are clinging to so many things in this world, and we are relying upon God. What kind of a God? Is he somebody like a black gram? Or is he somebody like a coconut or a jackfruit? Or is he something greater and bigger to comprehend the whole universe? What is the God that you are relying upon? When you are able to understand the measure and magnitude and potential of God, I think your devotion will become far supreme and excellent. We will be able to rely upon God with greater and greater confidence, with more and more of hope, comfort, relief and consolation. Everybody says that God is omnipresent, and we are running to see Him. Coming back to say, I have not seen Him. Then why are you running? I think there is a lot of role for the intelligence and right understanding. So, this kind of a discussion and proper absorption of the discussion will make you broader, more and more lofty and more resourceful. This is the introduction I wanted to give to the discussion that we are going to make, the third question of King Nimi. Parasya Vishnorishasya Mayinam api mohinim Mayam veditumichamo Bhagavanto bruvantunaha. My dear viewers, have you understood what is the departure that King Nimi is making in his third question? Parasya Vishnorishasya Mayinamapi mohinim. This is what he said. I have already explained it, but I would like to explain it once more to make the idea very clear. Lord Vishnu is supreme. We generally speak of Trinity. Brahma, the power of creation, Mahavishnu, the power of sustenance, and Shiva, the power of destruction and dissolution. Now, this is a Vaishnava Shastra. So, Parasya Vishnorishasya. Mahavishnu is considered to be supreme. Mayinam api mohinim. He is somebody who will delude. Even the most powerful Mayavi is deluding people. Shiva is deluded by him. Brahma is deluded by him. You know, there are so many instances where Brahma makes a mistake, as he sanctioned all the boons of Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu did penance on Brahma. Brahma was greatly pleased. Nobody does austerity on him. But here is one Asura who performs austerity. He went there. He was completely covered by anthill. So he became all the more happy. And then waking him up, he asked, I am very, very pleased. This kind of a terrible austerity, none has performed, none is going to perform. I am very happy, ready before you, standing to sanction any boon that you want. Hiranyakashipu asked for a number of boons. Completely he ticked everything, one after the other. And then with those boons, he started destroying the world. And Brahma has no remedy for it. People sought refuge under Mahavishnu. And he said, I will find out a method. After all, my own counterpart Brahma has given him a number of boons bestowed upon him. He is shining lustrously under those boons. So nothing can be done easily. At the same time, your problem has to be resolved. So I will get born to him as a very good lofty devotee, Prahlada. And though Prahlada happens to be his son, his devotion he will not tolerate. So there will be a conflict between the son and the father. Are you hearing? Are you understanding? Conflict between the father and the son. The son will not budge an inch from his devotion, and the father is unable to tolerate it. Finally, the father and the son, they almost engage in a duel. The duel you cannot say, because in opinion it was a duel. In the refuge it was a duel. But not in fight or action. So the boy was standing with folded hands. He says, for everybody and everything in this universe, Lord Hari is the only source, refuge. He was unable to tolerate it. Then he stepped forward to cut off the son's head. Up to that it happened. Suddenly Narahari appeared and there was a fight between the two. Hiranyakashipu was killed. So, Mayinam api mohinim. Even Brahma is deluded by this Maya. Mayam vedidumicchamo bhagavanto bruvantunaha. Shiva also is deluded. So that wonderful power called Maya, I would like to know, he says. I am not referring to verse number 2 and 3, which we have already explained. Now, he is explaining the creation, how it has all happened. Antariksha is answering him. Ebhir bhutani bhutatma mahabhutair mahabhujaha sasarja uchavachanyadhyah swamatratma prasiddhaye. This word swamatratma prasiddhaye, I have already explained it. The entire creation is to manifest the potential, the glory, the splendor and the supreme nature of the Lord. But for this display, we will not be able to know anything about it. See, can you understand the interspace between the stellar region and our earth? You take away sun and moon, then you will find it's all nothing and nothing. Looking at such a Shunyakasha, will you ever be able to understand the glory of the Lord? We are able to understand it because it is an endless universe of planets and heavenly bodies. The earth on which we are living is one of the heavenly bodies. And you know, so many beings are there. Huge trees are there. What all things are there? What is the power of an atom? then what should be the power of a mountain? What should be the power of a planet? All these are clearly revealing the glory of the Lord. But for this revelation, we will not be able to understand at all. He says, Nanudrupye jushan yushmat vacho harikathamritam samsara tapanistapto martyaha tat tapabheshajam. My dear yogis, you have started speaking. 2 of you have already spoken. By listening to you, I find there is a lot of nectarine feeling in me. I am not satisfied. I am not satiated by whatever you talk. Anywhere, anyone talking about the glory and splendor of the Creator, of the Lord, is extremely nice, sweet, delicious, fulfilling, and expansive in the mind. Now, this is what King Nimi says. This Swamiji would like to ask every one of you, my viewers, what is your experience? Are you also similarly feel? Otherwise, there is no point in my talking to you. I am discussing the Mukti Skandham of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 11th Skandha. And Sri Krishna is going to speak to Uddhava, the last message of Krishna. Before that, Vedavyasa Maharshi has brought in this dialogue between 9 yogis and Emperor Nimi. Unless that dialogue is supremely good, compatible with what is going to be discussed later, Vedavyasa would not have inserted it here. So you should understand it. See how the discussion is going. So he says, Nanutrupye jushan yushmatvacho harikathamritam. This harikatha, the story of Lord Hari, is actually a nectar. Nectar to what? While hearing, you can say to the ear. But nectar to the mind, nectar to the intelligence. How these questions are stimulated in the human mind. An emperor ruling his kingdom, sitting on the throne, welcomes 9 yogis, suddenly spiritual ascetics, you can say dropouts, hippies, and he is asking them to explain devotional dharmas, a Maharaja, as if he had nothing else to do. So how important the whole occasion is. Harikatha Amritam, samsara tapanistaptaha martyaha tat tapabheshajam. This is actually a great medicine, a very effective medicine to remove all the ills caused by worldly life. Antariksha uvaja evar bhutani bhutatma Mahabhutair Mahabhujaha Sasarja Uchavachanyadhyaha Swamatra Atma Prasiddhaye. God is actually identical with creation. This is a proposition I would like every one of you to understand. We generally don't see God, but we think of Him. Why? What is the reason? Because we look at the world. We are all living in this world as part of it. We have a very small body, limited body, but the world surrounding us is unlimited on every front, and we are supposed to interact with it. Nobody will come to our rescue. So in our interaction, we are a very small creature, and the world is endlessly huge. When we see such a world, we are obliged to think of a great power and a source for all. If at all there is any evidence for God, this universe itself is the evidence. Because it cannot be created by man, nor by the other animals. Naturally, there must be a supreme intelligence behind the entire creational display. So, we are saying that God is identical with creation. But for creation, we would not have been able to think about Him at all. So, the discussion about creation is inevitably the discussion about godliness also. When we are discussing how the world is, what the universe is, that discussion is really speaking a discussion on godliness itself. How did God create all these things? God is described in Srimad Bhagavatam as Bhutaswarupa and Bhutatma. What are these words signifying? Bhutaswarupa. What does it mean? We are making idols. and other depictions for God, taking some material or the other, maybe a piece of marble or a granite block or a piece of wood or a ball of clay. We are making. That is what we are making. What has God Himself done to make Him manifest? He has become the Bhutas, the Pancha-Bhutas, and so many other things which crop up as a result of this mutual combination of the Pancha-Bhutas.